So I want to take a second to talk about emotions, because, I think as an Enneagram Five, that's one of the things we struggle with the most, how to actually deal with emotions, what to do with them. And, because our defense mechanism, our go-to kind of play is, to disengage whenever we are in a situation where we don't understand something, or we don't feel secure, or we're stressed or whatever. Because our goal as an Enneagram 5 is our kind of overarching goal is to gain this deep understanding of the world. That's how we gain our confidence. And so when we feel like we don't have that understanding, we disengage, right? And we create distance there. And that allows us to sort of take a step back and observe and analyze and try to gain an understanding so that we can build up the confidence to re-engage. And so what that looked like for me in terms of emotions is whenever I would start to feel things that I didn't understand, I didn't know what to do with, I would disengage. So I wouldn't allow myself to feel those things in that moment. I would put on the brakes. And there, and with the goal of coming back later and feeling them, letting myself feel them later when I'm in a safe space where I can kind of process and analyze and understand them. But there are two big problems with that. One is that feelings now never feel the same as feelings later. It just doesn't work that way. And two, which is probably the most detrimental, is I hardly ever actually came back to sort of process them. I couldn't find the time or the energy or whatever. And so I would just end up with all of this stuff piling up, and I would just keep stuffing it down until it would fester or explode. And for me, it wasn't until I started to learn how to let myself feel those things without needing to understand them or analyze them, that it wasn't until I started to learn that I really started to have some big breakthroughs in my life. Because the kind of great irony of our quest to gain this deep understanding is that when we create that distance, when we separate ourselves from those feelings, we're cutting ourselves off from the ability to gain that deep understanding, right? When we separate ourselves where we're just observing, we're sort of this third party bystander in our own lives, we remove ourselves from the experience. And to really gain that deep understanding that we're looking for, it requires the feelings, it requires the emotions, it requires actually living out these things. Otherwise, you become sort of this collector of information, right? You know a lot about these things, but you don't actually know them. You haven't gained that experience. And so for me, it took practice with mindfulness meditation and that sort of thing, to start to allow myself to, when I get in those situations where I want to disengage and so badly, to create that distance where I can feel safe, instead saying to myself, you have these feelings, they're there for a reason. Let yourself feel them. You don't have to understand them. You don't have to analyze them. It doesn't have to make sense. It may be uncomfortable. It may hurt. But just sit there, even if it's only for a moment, and just let yourself feel them without judgment, without shaming yourself for whatever feelings you have. If you're angry, feel angry. If you're sad, feel sad. Let yourself feel it. You don't have to know why. You don't have to understand it. And the more that I've practiced that, the more that I've started to experience this more of the richness and the fullness of life. Because the other thing that I learned is that, when I pull myself out of these experiences, and when I pull myself away from these feelings, I'm pulling myself away. I'm creating that separation from what it means to actually live and to experience life. And when you do that, you can't not start to feel a sense of meaninglessness, and even a sense of hopelessness. And so for me, when I started to recognize this in myself, and started to practice letting myself feel, that's when life really started to become more vivid and more full and more rich. And so my advice is, let yourself feel. Practice it, even if it's only for a minute or two at a time. You'll start to see some really big improvements in a really short amount of time. At least I know that I did. So hopefully that helps, and I'll see you later.